for our first roundtable session discussion that we have today with Maria Miller. I'm super excited to talk to her this afternoon about empowering you to show up as yourself. But Maria, I wanted to give you an opportunity if you wanted to introduce yourself.
Sure. First, thank you very much for having me. I am excited to be here. My name is Maria Miller, and I am an attorney, former diplomat, meditator, lover of self-empowerment, and overall citizen of the world.
Yes, I love that bio. I love that bio. Yes. So we want to talk with you today a little bit about what it means to show up as yourself and feeling empowered to do that. So I'll kick it off just by asking you, has it ever been hard for you to show up as yourself, particularly in your professional journey, or like has it been because of, and if not, right, like, or has it, if that ever has been a difficulty, do you feel like it's been because of, prevailing work environment factors or something else? Like, what were those things, if that was ever an issue for you?
Well, it's absolutely been an issue for me. And I think it will be for everyone, but for different reasons. And it has been for me a number of times in my career, each for a different reason. And part of it, I think, is really in learning and growing. What I would accept in my career very early is different than what I would accept now. And that's just the process of iteration of me knowing myself and growing and wanting different things in my life as my career has progressed.
Yeah.
So I think it has changed. I'll give an example of my early years when I was an attorney. I came out of law school and thought that I wanted to be a litigator, an attorney that goes to court and argues every day. And I was good at it. But I realized that as I needed to go in and in order to be good at my cases, I needed to turn it on. I needed to switch on something when I walked into that courtroom that meant that this is this persona that I'm full of confidence, and not that I'm not comfortable with myself, but I had to be a persona when I walked in. Yeah. And that cost me something, because I said, that's typically not my personality. I tend to be more of an introvert, and I don't want to turn it on and turn it off every day. Yeah. So what is the cost of that? So in just assessing that and assessing how I felt on a daily basis, it became apparent to me that litigation wasn't really for me.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the job's fault. It was that I didn't really know what suited me best at the time. I loved the job litigation. As I said, I was good at it. It just wasn't really suiting my personality. And so I ultimately ended up transitioning into more of a transactional real estate finance attorney, which better suited my personality.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's actually, and when we're talking specifically about empowering yourself to show up as yourself, right? Like, it's empowering yourself to make those kinds of decisions, right? Because sometimes people just will stay in a position and, they know that it maybe is not the best thing for them. And it may not even, because it's not the best for you, right? Like, it may not also be the best for the job either, that you're there, you're not really in your full capacity, right? So sometimes, being empowered to say, I'm going to take a step of, courage here and leave.
I think that that's critical. I mean, listen, we spend a lot of time at work. It's where you spend the bulk of your day. Yeah. And you can, the stress that a job creates can impact your social life, your family life, your self-esteem. It is really important for you to be comfortable in the place that you are spending the majority of your time. And I'm not saying that you have to love every job that you're in, but you've got to be comfortable. It's got to not have a tremendous cost on your life. And that tremendous part is the hardest part to define, but one that we each must define for ourselves. No one can really give you that formula, but if you are unhappy every day, if you find yourself not wanting to get out of bed to go to that job, or just feeling like you're having to be something completely different than you'd
Right.
like to be, that's the cost. That's the cost. And really, as I said, it does impact everything in your life. You don't want to go home and argue with your significant other because you're hating what you do at work, or feeling inadequate, or feeling like you're not really doing a good job because you're having to put on a face or a character that is not
Mhm,
really you.
mhm, mhm,
Even
mhm.
if you're good at it, it's costing you internally.
Costing you something over time. And
Yes.
you don't realize it, and then one day, 10 years later, you wake up and you're miserable and you don't know why, when you could have known 10 months into the job or a year into the job, right? But sometimes we sort of talk ourselves out of those things because we're like, well, this is, here are all the reasons why I should love the job, right?
Yes.
Here are all the reasons why this aligns with what I thought was my 5-year plan. And then, it turns into sort of, we've invested so much time, and it's like the reasons why people stay in a bad marriage, right? Like, well, we've been together for 30 years and what does it all mean? You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
investing that time into something that really is not healthy for them anymore, simply for the fact of, I've been here so long, right? And like, to shift my goals now, to shift my vision now, what does that mean? How do I even do that? That can be scary.
It is very scary. It is, but it is worth it. It is so
Yeah.
worth it. When I talked about my bio, I practiced law for 15 years and
Hmm.
just decided that actually it wasn't really, and I was making money, so had a very
Yeah.
comfortable life. I was a New York Wall Street attorney,
Wow.
making, a very comfortable
Doing the
life.
thing. You were doing,
Yes.
yeah.
Did I have time to spend with my friends? No.
No.
Did I have time to develop personal relationships or spend time with my family? I
Mhm.
did not. Could I attend family gatherings in the way that I wanted to? Could not. So
Yeah.
it was important for me to just shift. Then I went abroad and practiced diplomacy, working in an international environment, lived abroad for 10 years. Also great,
Yeah.
but I still did not have the things that I wanted to do. It satisfied one part of my life, but didn't satisfy another. So, as I
Mhm.
said before, it's a process that you have to make those decisions about what's important for you now, not what's
Yeah.
important for you for the future. I mean, that's a consideration,
Sure.
but unless you want to have a goal for 20 years from now and decide you're going to be unhappy for 20 years, and you're going to do this job for 20 years so that you're happy 20 years from now, you've got to find
Right.
happiness where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. And Brandon, I want to welcome you. Um, if you want to quickly introduce yourself.
Oh yes, my name is Brandon Gatson. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Brandon Gatson, and I'm just so right now I'm actually a co-owner of I'm in the vacation rental space on the private side, and on my professional side, I've been working in the oil and gas industry. But I'm actually looking to transition myself right now. So I'm doing MBA programs at Purdue University, and yeah, but like I said, a lot of experience, international work, oil and gas. So I figured I could just offer any kind of advice that I could, and also stay at home dad right now. So,
Yeah. Well, welcome. Congratulations on your MBA program as well. Yeah. So Maria and I were just talking about, when we're talking about empowering you to show up as yourself, and sometimes how that looks like making important career changes or shifts. And one of the things Maria was talking about was, being in one role for 15 years and then saying, this is actually not beneficial to me on all these, personal levels. And it's actually time for me to make a different shift into something that's going to bring me more joy and happiness now versus maybe an investment where I'm not happy until another 20 years, right? And so what it costs us to show up as ourselves one way or the other, right? Like if we do, it's going to cost us something. And if we don't, it's going to cost us something. So do you have any experiences like that where you've had to make some pretty important decisions when it, in the way of showing up for yourself as yourself?
yes, I'm so apologize. Give me 1 second. Let me,
Oh, you're fine.
apologize. that?
Professional. Okay. All right.
Here?
Can you still hear me okay?
Yep, even better.
Okay, let's see here. I think my audio just changed, but can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you even better.
Okay, all right. I for some reason I can't hear you. Let's see. Anyway, yeah. So in my experience, I think just showing up and being yourself is when I was reading about this, I thought about the oh my goodness, I thought about just some of the times that when like sometimes in these careers you might find yourself in like a pressure situation. And my thing always kind of go back to like the ethics, like what do you stand for at your core,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you might find yourself at odds maybe with some of your leadership or some other people that you have to work with. But like in terms of showing up, being your true self, I think it's important to stick to what is right, and it's particularly in an ethical sense. And I feel like that this has served me very well because I've had situations to where even let's say a vendor that I was working with, a long time vendor, and they might I'm kind of looking at a tough situation, but they asked me, well, how do you want to handle it? And I say, well, it was one particular situation I had in mind where I could have kind of asked the vendor to help me out and looking better to like some of my higher ups, and she asked me, she said, hey, how do you want me to, I can help you out with that, if you want, and I said, no, I need to face this. This was a mistake I made. I need to face this, on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you know what? Because she had previous experience working with my boss for years, and she said, you know what? Your boss would have took me up on that, and so that just that stood out to me because even though I had to go to kind of face the music on my own with that, I also had to work with her. So aside from just looking good to the people that I had to kind of answer to, I also know I got to keep my integrity with you too. So
yeah,
I feel like in the long run that helped me out because later that same lady, she gave me like recommendations, when I went on to the next thing, and ultimately even my old boss, they knew, like, hey Brandon, at least we know we can trust you. So just my thing was just be you, be who is right, whether you think it might cost you, I won't say your job, but it might cost you your job, or it might cost you, you might have to lose a little bit, but let's stay yourself, be true to who you are, and ethical. So in that sense, I would say, bring your real self in that regard. I think people can respect that. They can see that, in whatever profession that you find yourself in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That would be my advice on that.
Yeah, I think too, in those sorts of situations, you as the person who's having those experiences, you're also learning about yourself in ways that you may not have been able to learn about yourself, which I think is sort of makes me think back to Maria, what you were saying earlier, about having to really think about what was the priority there, right? Like being happy now or being happy in another decade. You know what I mean?
Right.
And what that
Yeah.
looks like, right? And so, and also like learning, like, this is not what I want. And so being able to say like, look, this was not a mistake, like me choosing to do this thing and staying in this lane for 15 years, I didn't make a mistake. I just learned that this is not really what I want to do. I learned that this actually doesn't make me happy, and it's better for me to find that out and then make that switch than to stick around and be miserable. You know what I mean?
I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's the need to pivot. And I think that it's important to do that throughout your entire career. What you think you want, what you think even the job is, if you find out that that's not the issue, if the job was something different than you wanted, or you yourself have transformed, there's nothing wrong in just pivoting to the next opportunity or pivoting. I mean, you need to be loyal and you need to do that in a respectful way, but we should be ready and willing at all times to pivot, to be true to ourselves, to admit that this is perhaps not a mistake, because you should have learned something in that, if nothing then other than learning about yourself, but to take those skills and put it in a put it to use in a way that benefits you.
Yes, absolutely. Because the more that you, the better that you, the more opportunities you take to do that, the better you get at that. The better you get at being able to name and identify, like, this job sounds good, right? Like maybe it pays really well and, you know, it offers you these things and it sounds great and it looks good on paper. But when you really think about it, you say, you know what, I already been there, I've already done that. And I know that, I know myself well enough to know that I could send this along to someone else and it may not be the one for me, right?
Yes.
Like you have that knowledge of self. And sometimes if we take the opportunity to learn it the first time, you know what I mean? It saves us a little bit of time so that we get really good at shifting our goals. We get really good at changing that 5-year plan, and we get really good at reimagining ourselves, you know? Sometimes you have to learn how to do that. I think the people who don't know how to adapt, are the people who don't know how to think quickly or take a step back sometimes. I think that those are the people who tend to struggle more in situations where they're unhappy and they just don't know how to reconcile that with what's going on in their lives, or, you know what I mean? Or if something's going on at work and they, you know, they feel like maybe, like Brandon said earlier, and then on an ethical standpoint, you know, where it's just like, this is not really aligned with where I want to go or what I believe is right about, you know, how to change the things in this industry and so forth. But you're learning that about you so that maybe you can leave and take that information somewhere else. You know, you just don't know. And it's better to make those changes so that we can sort of leave our own footprint in our various industries, you know, but you just can't know that unless you give yourself the opportunity.
Yeah, I would punctuate to know your why. If you're at a job just to make money, then okay, then you that's what you're there for. So you'll take the highest paying job. If you're there to learn and grow, that's something different than making money. So I know that I have taken career opportunities where I've taken a step back, making less for the purpose of learning and growing. That's something that we should not be afraid of doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you can't, we had a session with some mentors from Spelman a couple of months ago, and one of them was talking about, hey, Spelman, and she was talking about, you know, the importance that she learned for herself. And she was like, I'm not a risk taker, right? She was like, I don't take risks. I don't even take calculated risks. That's just not what I do. I have plans for everything that I do. And she came to a point in her career where that's what she had to do. She had an opportunity to do it before COVID, and then COVID happened, and it was the only option she had. And, you know, her thing was, you know, I learned that, you know, everything was telling me to take this risk, right? But I wasn't giving myself the benefit of the doubt that I could actually meet myself there. Couldn't really like get, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But then she did it, and now she knows. And so she still may not be a risk taker, but she might be someone who takes risks. What I'm saying, like,
and that goes to your networking and surrounding yourself with people that push you, and not necessarily at the job, people that know you, who have your best interest at heart, who can maybe even pull you up and say, look, sis, I see that, you know, you're at this job, but you're coming home pretty angry every day, or you're not who we've known you to be. What's going on?
Right. Or like what about the goal that you had that you would do this in 5 or 6 years? It's been 15 years. Where are you?
Yes.
You know, like, because, you know, the woman that we spoke with at Spelman, she was like, I just was chasing the money. She's like, I was not happy in the job anymore. I thought I was going to be happy, and I was for a while. And then it just became about the money because that was the only thing that I could find any comfort in. everything else about the job, not so much, right? Like I didn't really care about.
And then that's your why. If you're in it just to pay money or just to earn money, okay. But again, that comes with something. But you can have a fulfilling life, be paid reasonably, and I think that is possible.
Yeah.
And so, don't be afraid of taking that leap of faith, taking that step out, even if it's a step back for something that will help you grow. And your trajectory in stepping back may even be further because now you're more confident in what you're doing. You like it more. Trust me, when you like what you're doing, you will do it in a better fashion than something you don't like to do. We all know that to be true.
You'll actually invest more time, when it's something that you love because you care about it on a different level than just a task-based level,
Yes.
Just trying to get things done throughout the day. Like that's not a career. That's just tasks.
Yes. And I guess I would, there may be questions about, sort of how do people start with that? Just coming out of school or in your early career.
Sure.
And I would say, know your why even then. If it is to learn and grow, one thing, we all have got some student loans, I guess, I imagine. So being able to pay those back is important, but do you need to make top dollar? Do you want a signature job? It's important for you to interview the firm as much as they are interviewing you. Does the type of person, or is there already a presence of the type of person that you are at that job? If you are a Latina, are there any other Latinas at the job? If not, that's fine. You can be a first mover, but understand that is also going to come likely with some cost. You may have your presence there questioned, like, or did you get this job by a fluke or by affirmative action or by something else? You may have your colleagues making comments, and this may not be the case, but it may be, and you just need to assess whether you've got a strong enough constitution to be able to accept that subtle and not so subtle remarks or comments every day, and whether you've got a strong enough base at home that will help you and sustain you during that.
We actually have a question from somebody who is viewing, and I want to pose this to you and Brandon, which is, how do you share with management what you want from your company, like in the way of like commuting those learning and growth opportunities?
I'll go ahead and jump in on that one. So I think with your manager or with your management, I think you kind of have to get that relationship once you've kind of been there, and maybe try to get to know them, and like maybe from the start, just try to be open, just try to be I would say just as transparent as possible to and see if you can communicate this, like from the outset. Like I think some people, it's a tendency to you kind of maybe guess at what your management might want or what people want to see, as opposed to sometimes people can just be real. Let's just be authentic. Let's ask those questions, up front and see. And I guess sometimes you can be a good reader of how genuine they are. Whenever you talk to someone, and you're gonna see anyway once you get to working, how these people treat you. But I think that's something important. And then, like I said, if you're just starting out, you kind of got to learn and see what the environment is like anyway. You're not going to know, it's going to take a little experience, but because like I know in my experience, I found that even I didn't find it so easy myself to kind of be maybe a little direct, a little more upfront, but I'm learning, later in my career, I guess it's a little easier. You feel like you got some equity in the game, skin in the game. You can say these things. When you're young, you feel a little, not so sure about myself. But I think managers can, they can respect. They know if a young person is genuinely serious, and if you want to find these things out early on. And then I'll tell you, and then like I said, if you're serious, if you think you need to make a move and you do, they realize, oh, this person was really serious. But as long as you stay professional, stay positive as you can, you'd be surprised because I know, like I said, and just being honest, just being really transparent, these people can really speak highly of you down the line. And this is, to me, this is the value. It's not so much at the moment, but sometimes whenever you're ready to make that next move, move up the ladder, what have you, this person can speak well to you, and we speak well of you. I think that's one thing definitely don't overlook that. But that's what I would say.
I would even add to that, Brandon, too. I really appreciate you saying that, because what I would also add is that sometimes it takes one person throwing something out there that maybe the manager hasn't heard before, and other people have wanted to ask and just not. They maybe have been afraid to ask that question or bring up that thing. And you might not be the only person who's having that experience. You might just be the first person to say something about it. And so it might be important for that manager or for management to hear that, because there might be more of a felt experience than they know, than they would have known if you had not had the courage to say something. Did you want to add to that, Maria?
Yeah, I agree completely with your comments from Brandon and from you, Sasha. I think that there are ways to ask that are non-confrontational.
Sure.
Are there opportunities for people to do X, X, and S? If such an opportunity exists, that would be something that I might be interested in. That's a non-confrontational, easy way to ask, and to put your feelers out. I would also interview with other people, perhaps in the company, just to, information interviews. What kinds of things do they do, and what kind of background might be required to do that? If you're talking to your immediate boss, the annual evaluation period is always a time where you should be raising, okay, here's what I've done this year. I've done my job plus, but here are some things that I'm interested in for next year, or for the progressive, years. So how can we start to build these skills to get me where I want to go? So that's a conversation that you should have during annual evaluation period as well.
I would agree. Yeah. Because you just, you take those opportunities, you know what I mean? Because sometimes we feel like those are just like sort of like the routine things that come up every year or every quarter or whatever, but they can actually be constructive, especially when you have something to say, especially when you have something that you want to name. And then you maybe feel a little less pressure to just sort of initiate that conversation, right? Because they're giving you the opportunity to say whatever it is that you feel you need to say.
And you should take that opportunity. It's your career. You are responsible for your career. The company is not. Management is not. You are responsible. You always have to remember that.
That's right. And that includes knowing if you're going to stay or go, knowing what you maybe need to renegotiate, knowing what your boundaries are if they're different than they were 15 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, or before COVID, right? Like sometimes things change and you need to ask for what you need in order to stay there, and be happy, and perform at the level that they expect you to and that you expect of yourself, and that's just being loyal. That's not just being loyal to the company. It's being loyal to yourself. It's being loyal to your goals, even as they're shifting and changing. I do want to be mindful of the time. So we have 2 more minutes left. I just want to remind everyone that if you have a question, please feel free to drop that in our Q&A at the bottom of the screen there on the right-hand side. If you have a question that you'd like to ask, and if you want us to, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you, or I can ask that question on your behalf. But I just wanted to also ask, has there ever been a time when you felt like you made a decision to show up for yourself when you were maybe you were afraid to do that, but the reward was, you could see in retrospect that the reward was so much bigger in having done that instead of not showing up as yourself or for yourself?
Brandon, you want to take that?
Yes. Sorry, I was my son. He was a little loud. But yeah, so that one incident that I was telling you about, that I kind of, So I kind of had more than one incident like that with my boss, and even some a little bit more directly. But I don't know. It's something about being diplomatic in these situations. Kind of like you were saying, Maria. You don't want to be too, like I said, confrontational. You know, it's important to be diplomatic, because when I had some struggles with that boss. But when I did end up leaving, like I said, this is about 3 years ago. Even when I applied for my MBA program, man, this guy gave me a glowing recommendation, and I couldn't, I have to attribute some of my entrance to that review, and, but at the time, I couldn't really see benefits to that, just stressed out, oh man, this job is kind of demanding, 24 hours on call is pretty tough, but it pays off in the end. Now when I email them, we're not in touch so much, but every blue moon, oh, hey, my friend, yeah, just be yourself. You can only benefit from just being yourself. You don't have to, try to be something that you're not. You're enough, and your value. Trusting that, definitely.
Those are two really important takeaways. You are enough, and you have value, and that can be your why when you're thinking about what, should I go left or right, or how do I change my goals and this and that, or should I, or what will people think, right, if I'm making this sudden shift or whatever. You are enough, and you have value. Did you want to add anything to that before we hop off here, Maria?
Sure. Just to share a similar scenario I had. That was managing a trust fund. And at the end of each year, everyone in the corporation is required to sign off saying that all of the expenses that have come into the trust fund are valid expenses. And I had inherited this trust fund, and I did not know where all the expenses were coming from. But there was tremendous pressure on me as the project manager to sign off at the end of the year. And I kept asking where these expenses are. There was pressure on me from the budget department, from my manager, from everybody. Could you just sign off and we'll reconcile later on? And I would not. And to this day, I am known as one who is a stickler about my budget, one who knows how to manage the budget, and one who has integrity. And that all came from the fact that I would not just sign off because everybody wanted me to sign off. So it's important. Yes.
Yeah. And in that way, now your own reputation precedes you, and that works.
Absolutely.
For you. Yeah. Congrats. Good for you. I'm sure that wasn't easy, because sometimes people can get pushy when they just want to do the easy thing. You know what I mean? So good for you. Thank you so much, everyone who attended. Thank you so much, Maria and Brandon, for being here. We really appreciate y'all's feedback and your insight today. We want to invite everyone to come join us again next Thursday to talk a little bit about how to ask for what you want. So that kind of ties into what we talked about here today, but maybe some next steps on how to show up as yourself and for yourself.